Welcome to Meaningful World. This is our forgiveness series, part 3, and it is on forgiving our parents.
This is a very important topic. In Forgiveness Series 1, we addressed myths about forgiveness. In the second part, we addressed how to be ready, prepare with emotional intelligence and prepare the groundwork. So now we're coming close to addressing one of the main and very important areas of forgiveness, very foundational, which is forgiving our parents. If we can't forgive our parents, then basically that would challenge us to form our own family or adult relationships and have a meaningful life.
How can I forgive my parents? I'm not even supposed to be angry with them.
Yes, it's extremely challenging to forgive our parents. But it's very essential for our own inner peace. Remember, all these series about forgiveness is creating inner peace. So it causes us endless suffering. If we don't forgive, it causes us very painful relationships. And if we don't heal this primal family trauma, we can't nurture new and healthier relationships in our own lives. So it's in a way almost cutting the emotional umbilical cord. No longer expecting something from your parents. As an adult, I think there should be a switch, a shift where we would be responsible for our own feelings and emotions. Now, that said, we cannot get to that state without working first on healing the trauma associated or as a result of our relationship with our parents. And that is, I think, inevitable. I don't think there is any parent that has done something that has not, let's say, if not traumatized, at least upset the children. Because parents have the positional power to set limits, to discipline, to love, to nurture, and to empower. But how much of that was done in your family of origin is very, very, very dependent on how much work you've done in your own individual life as an adult. Now, the taboo is that you cannot be angry at your parents, but that's just a taboo. It's a myth. It's a relationship just like any other, and it's very, very normal to have a variety of feelings such as hurt, disappointment, frustration. And in some families, there's also a lot of shame and embarrassment and guilt feelings that are perpetrated by the parents. Now, I'm saying perpetrated, it may be a little strong, but it feels like that for the child when it's done by someone responsible to care for you and to love you and to nurture you. There are almost 69% of the American population or American children under age 18, according to the US Census Bureau, that are abused in some form or fashion. Now, that is a high number. And we can all rationalize and say, well, you know, my parents did the best they could, and my parents did what they knew, but that's still a very high number. It comes to what I was recommending 30 years ago, and I keep mentioning that every now and then in my lectures, that there needs to be a license associated with having children. Just like we have a license to drive a vehicle, we have license to practice in psychology, in nursing, in social work, medicine. We need, this is the highest responsibility, to bring a human being to this earth and be able to care, nurture, and love them unconditionally.
How can I forgive them when they've already deceased?
Yes, that's a very important question. And it's the same way you do when they were not deceased, because forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. Forgiveness is about you. So if you are alive, that shouldn't interfere with your forgiveness. Now, the misconception is that they are not here, they're dead, so therefore I can no longer forgive them. But it's not, because a lot of us think that forgiveness is giving something to someone else. And now the parents are deceased, who would I give it to? But that's a myth. Forgiveness is something you're giving to yourself. So you're still here. You can still give this gift of forgiveness to yourself. And you can, perhaps, if you're asking how to do it, I can recommend writing a letter and saying exactly what you need to say, and then either keeping them, burning them, or having a collective ritual with your friends in terms of letting go, cutting the emotional umbilical cord, releasing yourself from all that, whatever you're holding, frustrations, disappointment, hurts, sadness. Another way would be visualization, really um, keeping yourself in a meditative, prayerful, quiet situation, and then visualizing having one parent enter into your space, and then visualize saying everything that you wrote in the letter to the parent. And that is a very powerful experience. You can invite one parent at a time or two of them together, and relate to them and release your pent up emotions, and then end with prayer. And you can create a collective healing group, such as the ones we have at the Meaningful World with the 7-step integrative healing, and do a collective communal kind of healing. And that is very powerful as well, because you have all the empathy that uplifts you from the rest of the group members.
Wonderful. Those are all very concrete ideas that seem like they're things that I could do, I could try. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. But how about when parents keep telling the children that they're stupid, they're unable to do better, or that they're worthless? How do you forgive that kind of behavior?
That's a very challenging question, because I've witnessed a lot of clients talk about their parents calling them stupid, and that you can't do anything in life, you're not going to succeed in life. And I've had even a CEO, very successful company, and he was having extreme challenges. Although he was successful, he would come home and beat himself because he didn't think he deserved this, because the words echoed in his mind, even though he was 50 something, very accomplished in his career. but he was unable to detach and transform and work on his trauma from childhood and the repeated denigrating and negative and judgmental words and adjectives. Usually, you may ask, why would a parent even think of those kinds of negative words? This is their child, their gift, the next generation. And and psychologically, it's because they are feeling ashamed about something about themselves, and they are very perturbed and in turmoil within themselves. So, what they will then project to their children is the struggle that they are experiencing. But how would a child know that? There is no way a child would be able to even fathom that this is happening. Usually, children tend to internalize and would develop in them what we call it in psychology the bad me, the poor self esteem, thinking that I'm not worthy enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not handsome enough, or whatever, not enough psyche settles into the child and it becomes a lifelong challenge. And the sooner the child, of course, is in therapeutic sessions, they would be able to understand and transform that. But usually that doesn't happen because the child has internalized the bad me, I'm not good. They go through life always doubting, always second guessing, always judging themselves. And as we say at Meaningful World, the worst, don't let your worst enemy live between your two ears, in your head, in your mind, in your thoughts. So in a class I was doing recently, the students told us how when they wake up, they have all this thoughts, you can't do this, you're not good enough, the judge. As uh, Ruiz um, talks about in the Four Agreements. Fire the judge, he says. I would say just release the judge because there's no space for that. Life is already has enough inherent built-in suffering and difficulties, challenges politically, economically, socio-politically, etc. So we don't want to add to that. We want to ameliorate and overcome by letting go of the hopes that our parents are going to change. As soon as you notice that, then you start working as an adult on your health through therapeutic process to let go of your expectations of having a more healthier, balanced parenting. And when you let go of that, then comes what? The grief. Then you have to go through grieving for the parents that you didn't have, the loving parents, the nurturing parents that you didn't have. So the grieving is an important part of healing. Once you grieve, you let go of the past, and then you're able to look at the reality where your parents came from. Were they survivors of genocide? Were they survivors of the major depression? Were they just unable to deal because of economic hardship and the frustrations that grow from that? And their sense of inadequacy then transmits to the children. Anyway, even if they were very nice with you, all those negative traumas that your parents are going through, it's passed on to you. Even if they were hiding it, they were appearing that they're nice and easygoing, and sometimes they tell you they love you or they may hug you. you still are carrying all that negative circumstances, negative learning, negative experiences. So when you're letting go, it's important to let go three R's. The three R's are resentment, revenge, and rage, which comes from all the unresolved feelings accumulated from birth to adulthood. So we need to be mindful of the three R's, letting go of resentment, because now we already accept who they are and the challenges they come with. The rage that comes from unresolved, all that negative emotions. And the revenge comes from not being able to forgive. So these three R's, we have to work through a process to be able to let go and let love in. Then you can start cultivating your self-love. And then you can start attracting people who love you.
Wow. Seems like an awful lot of work.
Yes. And it's a meaningful work. It's in a way you feel at the end, wow, I am good. I've done so much, and I'm committing to continue the positive way of looking at things, to reframe things if they're not positive, and see the light at the end of the tunnel, or the silver lining in the cloud. Um, and I mean, a lot of children, adult children, say, well, they should know better. You've heard that, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. But shoulds, shouldn'ts, what already has passed, we cannot change that, but we need to understand it and let go on the three R's, let go of our unrealistic expectations, because we're not in euphoric make-believe life. If this is what you went through, then the challenge is to look for the positive lessons. What did you learn from? If you learn that you should also judge yourself and tell yourself you can't do this, you can't do that, and don't love yourself, or don't engage in self-care, well, you just joined your abusive parents then. Is that what you want to do? I'm sure not. And we've seen this, how these habits of negative relations go passed on 14 generations through DNA.
This work is breaking that chain,
Exactly,
and then you can only grow from there.
exactly. And if you are the generation breaking that chain, then it must be, it takes time to celebrate you and let that fuel you and lift you up like a hot air balloon. That, in fact, is enough for you to feel empowered, lovable, love yourself, so that you are in this positive, energetic space where you are also attracting positive circumstances, loving opportunities, and great life situations.
How about parents that have abused their children physically? How can they be forgiven?
Well, you always have to remember that you are not forgiving the act. That's another myth. I think we talked about it in the first series. We need to reinforce it, that people say, well, there are some things that's not forgivable. And you, even people, you know, well-known, famous people have said this, but they don't realize we're not forgiving the act. Never. Never an incest, genocide, rape, any abuse is justifiable. Never. That's not really what forgiveness is. Forgiveness is forgiving the person who didn't know better, didn't have the tools to discipline in a better way, didn't have the know-hows, was perhaps ignorant, suffering from other traumas, and was not mindful. That is who we're forgiving so that we have a peace of mind, that we exercise and experience that relaxation, that carefree attitude, the freedom that we need. And a lot of people say, well, I have the right to be angry. That's not forgivable. You know, it was physical or sexual or whatever. Um, and people think, yeah, this is a righteous anger. Anger is poison. You are right to be angry, but what are the feelings under the anger? Anger is the iceberg. We have brewing, many feelings brewing under. So we need to identify those so that we can take care of ourselves, know where the rage and anger and resentment is coming from, what's underlying, and we one by one address those underlying feelings, then the ground is ready for forgiving. We're not forgiving the act, never. Only the person who is not able to come forth and do the right thing. Remember, we have four kinds of traumas that people suffer. And since they're not like bleeding, gushing blood coming out, or they're not in stroke, they can't move, or they're not having heart attacks, things that are visible to us, to the outside world, you don't know how many of people around us walking around like a time bomb with 4 or 5 different traumas. Collective trauma we're going through now with the pre-election, political, virus, COVID pandemic, uncertainties, racism and hatred and resentment. All this is impacting. That's the collective. And then we have individual traumas. Then we have the vicarious trauma. And we have the horizontal. So we have all these 4 different kinds of traumas, and none of them are visible to the naked eye. And we assume they're mindful, healthy people, and then that's when we get disappointed. And we need to be more vigilant to engage mindfully and let things unfold so that we can evaluate and see how healthy this person is for us, to relate to them, to build a life with them, and etc.
So, from what I'm hearing you say, that forgiving our parents is going to allow us to be fuller, healthier, and more peaceful individuals.
Definitely, I can't reinforce that further, that it's a very essential first aid for our health, both physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, because that's the first relationship. That's our parents are the first adults that we come across, and then our teachers. So those 2 areas are very important areas for us to resolve if there are any kind of abuses or neglect or indifference, etc., so that we can be and we can live our full potential.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
I like to always end with our motto: shared sorrow is half sorrow, while shared joy is double joy. Thank you so much. May peace prevail in this earth starting from each and every one of our souls.